My name is Jesus M. Perez. I was born in Mercedes, Texas, in December the 25th of 1932. My sister picked me because I was crying when they put me under the Christmas tree. She thought I was a doll. I uh, I spent 18 years in Mercedes. I started working with my dad when I was 9 years old in a gas station. I worked there till I was 18. I joined the Air Force in 1952, 51. Uh, I got met with my football coach and I just went and joined. and I took basic training in San Antonio for a couple of weeks, and then they moved me to Shepherd Air Force Base in Wichita Falls, Texas. From there, I went to Biloxi, Mississippi to radar operator school, and I was the top man in the class, and they told me I'm colorblind, so they reclassified me, and then I went to Chanuteville, Illinois, to train as a aircraft structural repairman, so I can patch the holes and all that on the aircraft. I was selected to be an instructor, but I didn't want to be an instructor. And the general came over and said, "Congratulations, because you're the honor student and you're going to be one of my instructors." And I told him, "Sir, I didn't join the Air Force to be an instructor. I want to go to Korea." He said, "You do?" So he told his aide, take his name, so he wants to go to Korea, we'll send him to Korea. So I went to Korea in early 52.
Why did you want to go to Korea?
Why did I want to go to Korea?
Mm-hmm.
To me, that's where they needed the service people, and I had a lot of my friends that were in the infantry and Marines, Navy, and that were in Korea, and I figured that was why I was in the service, to serve my country.
Is that why you decided to enlist as well? Is just because you had friends that were in the military, or is it something that you had wanted to do?
I just felt it was more of a duty or an honor to serve in a combat area. And so I was assigned to the 17th Bomb Wing in Busan. And our job there, my job was to repair the combat damage in the aircraft. When an aircraft had more than big damage, what we call it 30-day damage, they would send us with the aircraft to Miho Air Force Base in Japan. We fixed the aircraft there, and then we would return back to Korea. And I got selected to be in the VIP crew to repair the aircraft. And I got to, when Eisenhower became president and he went to Korea to visit, I took a picture of him and his wife and Sigmarin and his wife from about 6 feet away from them.
Do you still have that picture?
Yes, ma'am. And I also, Debbie Reynolds was one of my favorite movie stars at the time, and I got to meet her, and I helped her get in the aircraft, so I touched her hand, and that was something. My biggest thing in Korea that really hurt me was seeing the infantry people, the infantrymen up there in those rice paddies, especially during the winter. The winters were rough up there. It was rough for us in the aircraft, but we were better clothed than they were, you know. And although I was an airframe repairman, I got to fly one mission to North Korea. I taught my crew, my pilots, and all that, and to let me fly in one aircraft. So they stick me in there, and I flew in as one of the gunners in the B-26 light bombers. We went into North Korea, and our job was to destroy the convoys that were carrying ammunition to their soldiers. And we saw this train going to this tunnel, so we were going to be smart. We're going to catch them as they came out of the tunnel. Well, it kind of backfired on us to a certain extent. They came out firing at us real bad, and they hit our aircraft pretty bad. Fortunately, none of us got hit, but we did damage the train. But that was my last mission. I didn't volunteer for no more missions after that. And after my tour there in 1953, in March of '53, I returned back to the United States. I was stationed in Bryan Air Force Base in Bryan, Texas. I kept wanting to go back to Korea. I kept volunteering, and they wouldn't let me go. And one day, I was complaining because they wouldn't let me go, and this old warrant officer hurt me. And he says, Airman, how long you been in? I told him 2 years and so many months. And he said, have you been to Korea? I said, yes, sir. He says, what field are you in? And I told him I was an airframe repairman. He said, you qualify for early release. So I got out in 1953. I got out of the Air Force 17 months early.
Why?
I was mad because they wouldn't let me go overseas. So when I got out, I went to work for Pan American Airlines for 6 months. And then 4 years in a chemical plant. I was doing real good in a chemical plant. And one day we had an explosion, so it was hard to get a job in late '57 and early '58. So I joined the United States Army. I put 22 and a half years in the Army. My first assignment overseas in the Army was in Korea. And I went up and stayed 18 months. It was supposed to be a 13-month tour, but I stayed 18 months. Got married in Korea. And I returned back to the States, and I stayed in the States for a couple of years.
Did you request to be in Korea?
Was it?
Did you request to be in Korea whenever you enlisted into the Army?
I volunteered to Korea, yeah. They told me they had an opening up there, so I volunteered to go to Korea at that time. And again, I was a structural repairman, and I did a lot because I mastered my trade pretty well, and I was pretty well known. And when I came back to the States, I went to Sharp General Depot, and shortly in 1961, I went to Okinawa. In 62, I ended out in Thailand, and then I ended out in Vietnam. I went with the first Armed Helicopter units to Vietnam, helped design the rocket pods and machine gun systems on the first helicopters in Vietnam. Put 4 tours down, came back to the States after my last tour in 1972, and got stationed in Fort Worth, Louisiana. I stayed there 3 years. In 1975, I went back to Korea, and I was I was first sergeant of the 117th Assault Helicopter Unit. And I was there during the chopping of the tree in Korea, and my aircraft, when they showed my aircraft flight in the show of force for that mission there. I came back to Fort Hood, Texas, and in 1979 I retired from the military.
So whenever you enlisted into the Air Force in 1951, you had already known about Korea because you had friends over there. So did you know where it was, or did you just know of Korea?
I knew of Korea because right after World War II, I had a neighbor of mine that was stationed in Korea, and he would show me pictures of it, of Korea. I tried to join the Marines when I was 17, and I changed my age to 17. My dad wouldn't sign for me. Well, the three of the 4 of us that went to join the Marines at that time, 3 they did join, and 2 of them became prisoner of war in Korea, and they all ended up getting killed up there.
They
So
were killed.
they all lost their life in Korea. And but like I said, I knew about Korea because this neighbor of us always told me about it.
So did you know that there was an actual war going on at the time that you enlisted?
Oh, yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Because the war started, I didn't go there till, I didn't join till 1951. It had started in 1950, so.
So in 1950, before you enlisted, was the Korean War something that was being talked about back here at home? Were people talking about it, concerned about it?
The news, all the news, you would hear about it, and a lot of the, my little town, Mercedes, had a lot of people in the service. That all branches of service, and I would working in the gas station. Everybody would come up there. They said in the evening, some of the older people would come up there, and we sit there and they talk, and I would hear the conversations. And
So you weren't nervous or anything about going to Korea, knowing there was an actual
I
war
was
going on?
what?
Were you nervous?
Nervous? Oh yes. Anybody that says he's not nervous, I don't think he's telling the truth.
How did your family react?
Well, they didn't like the idea. My dad didn't mind it, but my mom, when I told her, I went in, joined on a Friday, and I was supposed to leave on a Monday. I came over, I said, Mom, Monday I'm going to go to the Air Force. And she took it real hard. And she never did like, the whole time I was in the military, she didn't like the idea of it.
I bet she didn't like the idea that you wanted to go to Korea either.
Sure, especially when I kept volunteering, for different overseas assignments, she didn't like that.
So you served a total of how many years in the military?
A total of, with the Air Force time and the Army time, was 25 and a half years.
And where were you stationed at in Korea whenever you were in the Army?
In Korea, when the Army? The first time when I went up there, I was stationed in Pupyeong, close to Escam City, and it was an aircraft maintenance company, and the last time in 1975, I was stationed in Camp Stanley.
Tell me about your living conditions as far as food, sleep, clothing, weather.
In Korea? Well, in Korea during the conflict in the Air Force, we live in tents, but like I said, we live a lot better than the infantry or the Marines, because we weren't moving like they were. We were pretty much stationed, We had better heat, better facilities. Even our food, we had more food because our aircraft would fly in from Japan, from Okinawa, and our clothing was a lot better. I mean, we had real good clothing.
Was there any major differences between the living conditions from when you were in the Air Force to the Army while you were stationed in Korea?
Oh, well, when I went in the Army, even then, when I went in the Army, we had Kwanzas that were metal buildings, and we got the first running water in our area, and that was in 1958. And when I went back in 1975, it's a world different. We had brick barracks just like here in the United States, and running water, and everything was nice. You still had curfew.
What was curfew?
We had curfew after midnight, but we still and they lifted early in the morning.
Do you recall how much you were getting paid?
What's that?
How much you were getting paid?
Well, at first, I don't remember. I'll be honest. I think they paid us $70-something, and I was the type of guy. When I was working, I was a young punk. I used to always give my mother about 80% of my pay. And when I went into service, I still sent my mother some money, and I would send my sisters, maybe two of my sisters, $5 or something like that. I always supported my family up till up to even now. And the Lord has helped me in that area. And and then when I was in Vietnam, it was different. And then even my last tour in Korea, I was on flying status, and I was getting a lot more money than.
Were you exchanging any letters back with your family back home?
Did what?
Exchange letters?
Oh yes, I exchanged letters. It took me a little longer to write Spanish to my mom because my mother don't. But my sisters, fortunately, I had a sister older than me and one younger, and a few more. I got 5 sisters and 2 brothers. But the
Are you
oldest.
the oldest?
Huh?
Are you the oldest?
I'm next to the oldest.
Okay.
And my sister would write for my folks. My mother tell them what to tell me, and I write just about every day though. I always like to stay in touch with my family.
How is the relationships with you and other troops, maybe even foreign troops, Korean soldiers? How are the relationships?
I always got along with everybody. For some reason, the Lord gave me that talent or whatever you want to call it. I always been able to communicate with all kinds of people.
Backtracking real quick, do you happen to still have the letters? Any letters that you exchanged with your family?
Do I have any letters?
Did you manage to keep any throughout the years?
Not that I know.
What were maybe some of the most difficult or dangerous, happiest, rewarding memories that you had during your duty in Korea?
What was the happiest?
Either happiest, something, most memorable time, whether it was good or bad.
Well, one of the happiest things for me in Korea was everybody was. It was my birthday on Christmas, and my company commander had told me that he was gonna make it possible for me to spend Christmas in Japan. So all my crew on the 24th that morning, they flew him to Japan, except me, and I got mad. I wouldn't even talk to my captain. And what he did, he sent him ahead of time to Japan so they could organize a party for me. So late that afternoon, he says, "Okay, we're going to Japan." I say, "Oh yeah, you're telling me the truth, sir?" He said, "Yeah." So when we flew into Japan, we landed and they were waiting for me and they had a party for me. My crew. So that was the happiest.
How about that?
My sad time is when some of our pilots would get killed or some of the crew members. We had to repair the aircraft. They were full of blood and all that. And that's the sad times.
Were you engaged in any serious battles?
Just like I said, in my case was just that one mission to North Korea as a
Right.
gunner. And sometimes, they had some snipers in the area that they give us a hard time, and sometimes they killed a few of our people in the night, but not too often.
And were you ever wounded?
Injured? No, ma'am.
What was the impact of the war and I guess kind of the fight upon your life? Did it impact you in any way after you returned home from Korea?
What was the impact of the
How did it impact you?
I didn't like the way he ended it. I think it was a truce, and up to now, it's still a truce. As far as I'm concerned, it's sad that we ended out the way we did. But I still believe in supporting the South Koreans.
Keeping
Yeah.
our military there and
Oh,
defense. Have you been back to Korea? Well, obviously, I guess you have been back to
Yes,
Korea,
yes.
but have you been back since?
Not lately. I had been offered to go, but at the present time, one thing happened here and there, and I didn't get a chance to go. One thing I do like to say that I really admire the Korean people here that live here in the United States, because they teach their kids that if it weren't for us, they wouldn't be here. the kids were born here in the United States, and they let us know. They always, some kind of fun, they're always having functions for us Korean War veterans. I belong to the Korean Veterans Association, Chapter 222 here in Killeen, Texas. And the Koreans here, they're always dying us and whining us or giving us medal or something, but the kids they teach their kids that if it weren't for us, they wouldn't be here.
So in 1953, excuse me, the armistice was signed between China, the UN, and North Korea. There's no other war in modern history that has lasted 60 years. What do you think that we need to do to put a closure on it?
To put a what?
A closure on...
I'll be honest, we could invade North Korea, but then we are starting something. And every time we try to start something, we do something like that, we lose a bunch of lives. And there's a lot of innocent people that get killed in a war.
After you returned home, did you speak about your experience at all with your family, or share what you had seen? Or?
I did. I did more in the Korean War because, like I said, I was in the Air Force. I was more in a safer area than the infantry and all those. Coming from Vietnam, I pretty much recluse myself on what I'd said. It took me years to even open up on that.
In your opinion, why do you think the Korean War is often referred to as the Forgotten War?
Why do you
think, in your opinion, is the Korean War often referred to as the Forgotten War?
Well, the way I look at it is because if you read in the history books, they might have one little paragraph about it. The young ones don't know. And it's like that with Vietnam too. But the Korean civilian population, they teach your kids that. And we, us, the Korean War Veterans Association, we have what we show and tell. We go to schools and talk to the kids, and some of the kids are very interested.
Is this the Tell America program?
Yes, yes. And the kids, you'll be surprised, especially the little boys. My grandpa was this and this in the service, or my father, my father. And they help you with the program. And I really enjoy that.
How long have you been involved with that?
Oh, I've been last 5 years for sure.
Do you have any messages or anything that you would like to share with younger generations? Like, do you feel it's important for them to know the sacrifices that were made in Korea?
Yeah, I think it's very important they know. They know. You know, if you let the people know what takes place in a war and all that, and they go through, it makes them understand a little bit more in case they start a draft again and they get drafted, they understand a little bit more why they get drafted. And until you are in war, you never know how other people suffer, especially the orphans. It's hard to see a kid fighting for a piece of garbage because they're hungry. And that's really rough.
Do you think what we're doing here with the Korean War Legacy Foundation and interviewing veterans, do you think it's necessary and important?
For what, ma'am? I can't.
Okay. Do you think that interviewing veterans and preserving their legacy is important and necessary?
Oh yes, especially like I said, the history books don't have much.
Right. So if the history books aren't doing it, someone's got to, right?
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you would like to share as far as maybe any memories or messages, stories, anything of that nature that you'd like to share to sum up the interview?
The only really I like to say is that I wish they started raft again. Because there's a lot of kids in the United States and that don't amount to nothing. They don't get exposed to nothing. And a lot of those kids could be safe if they join the service, learn a trade, learn to communicate with people, teamwork. They get out and then they're better citizens. So I'm a firm believer of that. If I had the authority, that's one of the first things I start.
I've heard that one a lot. Well, if you have nothing else for me, like I said, this is your legacy, so if there's anything else that you would like to be preserved, now is the time. If there's anything else?
That's the only thing I can say. I'm very proud of my service.
We
And
thank you.
I would do it again.